right. What's up?
What's up?
What's up, world? This is Jace Ecaj coming to you live from the town, Seattle, Washington, 206 SEA. And we have put together a panel for Residency to present the town. We have a good mixture of older cats to younger cats to cross generations to experiences that are unique to each other, to ourselves, and we want to share this conversation with the world. So it's my pleasure, once again, like I said, to welcome you to the Residency Presents the Town. I also want to do a little housekeeping before we get started, and I allow these amazing artists, amazing folks to introduce themselves. First and foremost, there is a Q&A in the chat. So if you have a question, you don't worry, you don't have to throw your hand up, you don't have to do anything. You can ask your question, type it into the Q&A, and it will be sent to our tech guy, Gary Campbell, and the questions will then be relayed to me, and I will ask the questions. These questions also have the ability to be voted on. So if you ask a question and it doesn't get asked, it's maybe because that question wasn't what everybody wanted to hear. Also, during this conversation, you'll hear polls. You'll see polls come up on the screen. Please take the polls. The panelists will be taking the polls. You'll be taking the polls, and then we can come back and look at the polls and see what is on the minds of those that are listening, watching, and contributing to this conversation. And then lastly, the Residency has opened a Slack account. So if this conversation wants to continue and needs to continue, which it probably will, I don't believe an hour is long enough to have such a great conversation about a wonderful city like the Emerald City. So once again, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Residency to the Residency Presents the Town. With that being said, I will be your host. My name is Jace Ecaj, and we have a wonderful panel. So what I'm gonna ask is that everybody introduces themselves in 25 words or less, right? So we can get this conversation going and make it as fun and as interactive as possible, because this is a conversation, this is not a dictation. And let's start with, who am I looking at? Let's start with Chong.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Aldo Augustino. I go by Chong the Nomad. I'm a producer DJ from Seattle, Washington. I started producing when I was 14, started DJing when I was 16.
Oh, in 25 too. We rolling.
Yeah.
All right, next up, I'm just going in order as I see it. Next up, the one and only Sir Mix-a-Lot.
What's good? Mix-a-Lot. You know, been doing this from day one. Used to be a DJ, then started being a producer and electronics cat, wiring in my own studio. And I made a couple of got lucky.
Okay, well, there we go. We moving right along, y'all. So next on our panel, we have the soulful Miss Tiffany Wilson.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Wilson, and can y'all hear that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Tiffany Wilson. I am a singer, songwriter, artist, originally from Tennessee, raised here in Seattle.
Go. Thank you, Tiffany. And then next, let's keep this thing moving, is the one and only producer extraordinaire, Jake One.
What up? I'm Jake One. I'm a producer, DJ, sometimes background singer, born and raised in Seattle, Washington. Yeah, a lot of years.
That's for sure. That's without question. I'm glad you came into focus, because I'm coming to you next. The lyrical spitter, y'all know her. Gifted Gab, what's up?
How you doing? How you doing?
All right.
Gifted Gab from Seattle, Washington, Central District. My genre, I guess, would be hip hop, R&B. I'm a creative. I be making stuff.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you and glad you're making stuff. And we're gonna keep this thing moving. This is a young lady I'm getting new to and familiar to, so I'm glad to have her on the panel. DoNormaal.
I'm DoNormaal. I'm a rapper, writer, poet. I started making music in Seattle in 2014. That's pretty much it.
All right. Let's keep it moving. And we got the up and coming sensation of the nation, the one and only Travis Thompson. What's up?
What up, y'all? I'm Travis Thompson. I'm from Burien, Washington, and I'm a rapper, and I make videos with the homies, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Dope. And last but definitely not least, the person who helped start this program that we're presenting this conversation from, the one and only Macklemore. What up?
What's up, bro? I'm Macklemore. First and foremost, I got a beard. Secondly, I'm a dad. Third, you know what I'm saying? I'm a rapper and a golfer and on quarantine and just grateful to be here, man. Good to see you, Jace. You look smart as hell, man.
Do I look smart?
Hella smart, bro.
Good. That's what the whole point was. That at least I look the part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you
It looks smart,
That's
right?
okay.
Well, it's good to see all of you all. What's up? It's a great day. You know, it started off with a little rain, so it had to bless us and let us know we are in the town. And so with that being said, I want to get this conversation started because I see people are joining in, and there's a lot of questions that I'm sure they would love to ask each and every one of you. So I want to start off, and this is for everybody, and however you want to do it, we can popcorn it, and see what happens. When you hear the phrase "the town," what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Home.
Yeah, go ahead, Tiffany, or Gab, whoever. I see both of y'all.
Oh, I said home.
Oh, home. Okay,
Yeah.
home. All right. What else?
Well, for me, I can say this.
town.
I came from both hoods. South End back in the day, CD, you know, had a lot of cats in my group from the hilltop. So, you know, the town is bigger than just Seattle. It was like C-Town, it was T-Town, it was Bremerton, Maharaji, what's up? You know, so it was all over the place for me. But it, you know, we was calling it the town actually before the Bay was. People don't know that though.
Speak on.
Come on, these are the facts they need to hear. So, Vic, speaking, saying that, a lot of people would want to know, how did we come up with that, or how do you remember that coming into play as far as like wordplay in the town?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, really? It was straightforward. I mean, at the time, you know, people always thought Mix-a-Lot started. Mix-a-Lot didn't start it. No, Emerald Street Boys started this. Real talk. And when they were the cats in the town. They were the first ones I heard say it. So we just adopted it and kept running with it. And nobody considered us a city. So we took town and ran with it, really. And it really, we hadn't really found ourselves, but Emerald Street Boys let us know we ain't got to sound New York. We ain't got to sound LA. We can be us. And that's really where it started.
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna just go ahead and pick y'all. Tiffany, what do you think when you hear the town, the phrase "the town"?
Actually, I see more than I think I think of a word, but it's kind of a web more so. I see a connectivity with a certain amount of space in between those connections, and so I guess it spreads out like Mix was saying. It for me, I mean, I grew up all over the town or all over the city in Washington from every corner, so I never felt like I wasn't a part of the town. So.
Oh. What about you, Chong the Nomad?
I mean, the first thing I thought of was like, honestly, was just driving around the city with with friends and everything, and wanting to write like a soundtrack for that. I guess that was the first thing that came to mind. I grew up in Kent, Washington, and it's always been my dream to move to Seattle, and I did that when I went to school here. And I guess like being inspired by the people around me constantly. Yeah. That's what makes me.
DoNormaal. I'm trying to say your name right. I just want to call you DoNormaal, but it's you're doing more than normal things. So what do you think about when you hear the phrase "the town"?
Got it right. DoNormaal. That's it.
All right.
When I think of the town, I'm not from Seattle originally. I moved there when I was 20 years old, and it was probably the first place that I had really lived and set down roots, because I grew up moving all around, never lived somewhere more than 1 or 2 years. So to me, Seattle is kind of like the place where I became an adult. It's where I grew up. it's where I started doing what I like to do and where I became brave enough to get on stage. So when I think of the town, I think of like an initiation. It was an initiation space for me as an artist and just like as an adult and as a human.
Oh, that's super fire. That's filthy right there. What about you, Jake Juan?
I'd say, you know, definitely home, that sense of community. It's weird because with this quarantine going on, I've been like walking a lot more, and I'm just walking through all these blocks around here, and it's like I have a memory for every street at this point, you know what I mean? And just the change and how different it is. I mean, a lot of my memories are from the 80s, so, you know, it's not, it's nothing like it was.
You weren't around in the 80s. Were you born in the 80s? What's happening?
I was born a little before that. But yeah, I mean, I walked to Garfield the other day, and I don't think I've done that since probably like 87. You know, and that's, how long ago was that? You know what I mean? And it took this going on for me to even do that. So it just definitely had me reflecting a lot about, you know, what's happening.
Go. Trav or Mix? Trav or Matt? Mix already answered. Trav or Matt, you guys got any input on this one?
When I think of town, I think of like the era of like Seattle hip hop I grew up listening to, or like when I was like younger, going to shows and like taking the bus to like go see y'all. And yeah, when I think of town, I think of like when Gio had like the foam fingers. I think of like a bunch of stuff. You know what I mean? I think it's Seattle hip hop. Anytime I hear the word town, it's like very Seattle hip hop.
All right, Mac. What's up with you? What you thinking?
Yeah, it's almost it's interesting because it's almost a word of nostalgia, and it's one that I still use. And this is still the town, but I do think kind of how Jake and Travis touched on it. Like I think more of an era, in a long era, in different eras too. But I think that if I'm just being honest, like the way that the city feels now, like even outside of quarantine, like beforehand, and it's been feeling for a long time with gentrification and the lack of community and the lack of diversity, it's felt less and less like the town that I grew up in and the one that I fell in love with and the one that I felt a part of, and more like Amazon.
Yeah.
Condos that look like they were purchased from IKEA. You know, rent that you can't afford, and that to me is what the city is turning into. So I you know, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic with it, but you know, oftentimes I walk around and I'm like, damn, this is not the city that you know, I grew up in and the one that I fell in love with. Obviously I still love it, but you know, it's changing.
It's changing.
Definitely.
Yeah. See, did anybody want to chime in on that? That comment as far as like the change?
Oh, I can.
Yes.
Echoing what Max said, I was around, you know, I grew up, you're talking about late 70s, early 80s. So I would literally get on my bike from the Bryant Manor Apartments on 19th and Yesler once I got past the whole stroll, because it was real. You know, I'd ride down to Garfield, you know, go swimming in the pool, run by, you know, get a little barbecue off the strip. And it was a community. You knew everybody by name or nickname, right? Or them cats. If it was them cats, you went to the other side of the street. That's what it was.
Right.
You know, it was Yesler Terrace versus Bryant Manor. We lived, you know, we had project battles, you know, stuff like that. So I lived in 3 different projects: Lakeshore Village, Rainier Vista, and the Bryant Manor. So that sense of community is gone. And I'm with Mac on the, and I'm not trying to sound like the old cat, but when I look, I told my girl this driving through downtown. I said, you know what? This is about 10 years ago. I said, Seattle's about to change. It's about to look like every city I see when I'm on tour. A bunch of big, erected, ugly ass skyscrapers. And when you stay in these hotels that are down there, they got these little hollow floors. I know what Mac's talking about, man. If you bump your knee on one of them tables in these hotels now, it'll crush. What it was, I remember when the millionaire here was Ivor Hagelin, you know, and now it's all tech. Cats, I can't even pronounce their name half the time.
That's right. So okay, let's stay in that vibe. So in saying all of that, what are some of the things that help shape you? Like, what is your most memorable experiences as an artist being from this town? What is something unique? Let's go backwards. Let's start with Mac this time.
You know, one of the first things that pops up in my head that I was thinking about the other day, I was recording a verse and it was kind of some reminiscent type verse. And I remember Mad Crew used to put on shows. And I remember, you know, this was like back when like we used to really abide by the elements of hip hop. Like it wasn't like, I don't hear anybody talk about the elements of hip hop anymore. And honestly, like watching the Primo and RZA beat battle last week, it reminded me that I fucking love this shit. But I remember, like, you know, there was a dude in the corner doing a mural, spray painting. There was a little b-boy area. There was a beatbox battle. There was an MC battle. And I was probably at the time, you know, 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. And I remember just being blown away. Like, you know, I get to pick, you know, because I was already writing graffiti from a real early age. But I get to pick what I want to do, you know, like, you know, do I want to be a DJ? You know, my parents' turntable doesn't work. I'm trash at dancing, you know, like, let me try to beatbox, you know, all these different forms of expression. They really were introduced to me by, like, you know, going to this one show at the beginning. I remember going to, like, I think Tribal had, like, I don't know where, it was somewhere in the Central that Tribal put on, I think. There was like a park jam, you know, just real early memories of people coming together and, you know, all the different elements of hip hop being represented at these gatherings. And yeah, those were some very formative years that really shaped me and made me want to be a part of this culture.
Dope. One quick note, while some artists are talking, can you please put your mute button on, because we're getting some feedback from folks as other folks are talking. So I will call on you. So Travis, we're going backwards. What is a memory that you have that helped shape you here in the town and get you to where you are today?
What really got me into like the Seattle music scene really was You Speaks Seattle, the youth poetry program. So like going to those writing circles and open mics and poetry slams, because if anyone here has been there, y'all know that it's like, it's every type of like art form, you know what I mean? When you go to the open mics, it's like rapping, stand up, singing, like everything. So like, that was my first time ever being around people. I don't know, I guess like he was saying before, you go to a show and there were ciphers and stuff like that. I didn't really have that growing up. Like I would go see a show. Like the internet was already popping when I was a kid going to see shows, so it was like no one was like ciphering, you know what I mean? So like going to You Speaks or going to like Seattle hip hop shows was the first time I ever saw like kids around me doing their craft and like proudly, you know what I mean? So like being in those spaces and being in like youth art spaces in Seattle in general was the kind of like catalyst that made me want to be a part of it.
Oh. I'm gonna go to Tiffany Wilson on this. I think, yeah, Tiffany Wilson.
I probably have a little bit of a different experience because I started singing and growing up here in church, and so it wasn't until I actually became an adult that I realized, okay, I actually want to try another side. But I think what shaped me was, if anyone is familiar with Troy Wright, he had Hendrix Records, and that was like my real first taste of music business in Seattle. You know, we were a gospel group, and seeing things on the road and things like that made me realize what kind of artist I wanted to be. You know, though I love music with good messages, I still wanted it to be realistic. You know, it wasn't realistic for me to pray every day, you know, and it wasn't realistic for me to, you know, do other things. And so that kind of shaped me in saying, I realize I have a talent. Here are some of my strengths. I'm working with Derek Clark. Those were really big, Troy and Derek and Crystal Aiken, those were really big, what is the word I'm looking for? They made big impressions basically on me as far as my artistry. And and then, you know, as I did get older, it was places like Jambalaya, and I sang with Hit Explosion, you know, just, I was on both sides of it. I was the freestyle in there with singing, and then as well as 70s disco, you know, so,
Right.
so
Right.
there was two sides of the coin for me that I got, and you know, that have helped shape.
Oh, and you know, the reason I asked this question before I move on to the next panelist is I want people to really understand, like, we're not starting from ground zero. There is a foundation to what is happening with us as artists. There is a reason why we have a love for the music that we have a love for. And there's a reason why this town has a part to play. I always like to say, you know, this is the next big mecca in the world for art, is this area, because it's so forgotten. It's the hidden gem of the world, and particularly the United States. And, you know, I'm sure there'll be some discussion around maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But I really feel like there's so much talent here. But how do we share our story when every time it seems like we share our story, we're the only ones doing it, right? You're the only one in the room from the town. And so it's important that the audience, particularly these young folks, listen to their peers and listen to some older folks and more experienced folks and understand why their experiences that they're having now will help shape them and plays a major role in what they'll end up becoming as far as artists goes. Maybe not overall as folk people, but as artists goes. So Jake One, coming to you. How about you?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
The question was, what was an experience, or what was your most memorable experience that helped shape you?
I think one of the early things I really remember was being a freshman at Garfield, and Vitamin, and I think there was, I don't remember who all the artists were. They performed it like an assembly, and I just remember seeing him up there scratching. I just couldn't believe somebody that was my age was doing that, and it sounded good. So yeah, that always stuck with me. It was just so shocking to me at the time. I think that was like 1990, 91, something like that.
Jake, you got so much to offer as far as a producer, but I know sometimes talking is not necessary.
I mean, you know, like,
because I think you got good stories to share. So
yeah.
that's all. You know, I know you, so I'm a little more like it. But anyway, let's move forward. So Chong, what has helped shape you, and what has been your most memorable experience here in the town?
Mine is probably a lot more recent than others, but I was in a beat battle in 2017 that kind of shaped my entire career. It was being judged by Ryan Lewis and Sango, and at the same time I was surrounded by like so many producers my age that like it's something that I never really experienced before. I was a loner, and I never even played my music in front of people before that. So it was at the Vera Project, and I remember like I got there 2 hours early, and I was just sitting outside alone for a while. But you know, it was just something really special to me to be in that like right next to KXP, like right next to Key Arena, like right in the middle of that, and just I had a moment. But definitely that beat battle at Vera Project.
Oh, DoNormaal.
I think the DIY music culture in Seattle really helped shape me as far as how I see myself kind of having power and control over my artistry and where I'm performing and what spaces I want to perform in and what those spaces are going to be like. And just the fact that there's such a large portion of the population in Seattle that make music, and it's like any night you can go see music at a variety of different places, and you can go play music, and you can like go to your friend's house and throw a show in their basement anytime you want. And I think that just kind of taught me that you don't have to have you know, these certain power structures and gatekeepers to like move through a music scene that's in a city like Seattle, where it's just happening at all different levels all the time. And you can kind of just find your place and where you fit in. And yeah, just throwing house shows with my friends is like the best times of my life, you know, and like anybody can come and you can pretty much do whatever you want there as long as you're not hurting people. And yeah, just that kind of community building around like what kind of artists we wanted to be and what we wanted our artist community to look like.
Dope. I got to remember to hit my mute button, unmute myself. You guys, these are great stories. And I think, you know, sometimes when we tell stories, we don't understand how powerful they are to our listeners. There's a lot of folks that are listening right now that you're motivating just by sharing the story, just by telling your, you know, some of the things that you remember and some of the experiences you had. Really motivate people and inspire people. So I want to thank you for telling that. Let's move on. Let's keep going. Gab and Mix will be our last two, and then we're going to move to our third question. And hopefully this one will really spark some things to come out of everybody. But Gab, what's been your most memorable experience as far as an artist in the town?
I don't know if I can put my finger on particularly one experience, but just growing up, being raised, you know what I'm saying, in the Central District, going to church in the Central District, middle school, all that, like, you know what I'm saying, down the street from Junkins Park, like just being immersed in, you know what I'm saying, my neighborhood and my community has always been inspiring in one way or another. Kind of similar to Tiffany, I grew up singing in the church as well. And that's probably why I first probably developed my love for music. I played piano at very young age as well. And, you know, anybody that is in the church knows that if you know how to play an instrument, like even if you don't know how to play an instrument, you probably gonna have to play the piano that Sunday because the pianist just didn't come. So, and it's only a few chords, you know what I'm saying? Just like the drums, like you don't need to be hella filthy to do, you know what I'm saying, church drums, just keep the same pattern. But anyway, just kind of, you know, learning as you go, being put on the spot like that, you know, is a good introduction, you know what I'm saying? Your family is there, so no one's really judging you. You mess up, they're like, go ahead, baby, like you got it, all that. So just building that confidence there, as well as just the arts in Seattle in general, outside from music, you know what I'm saying? Like, as a kid, my mom used to take me to like Alvin Ailey, and you know what I'm saying, we have family members that played in the Black Nativity and, you know, Langston Hughes and all this stuff, you know what I'm saying? So just being immersed in the arts has always been very inspiring to me. And like I said, I don't have one experience that probably shapes why I do music, but, you know, I also paint as well. You know, I draw and just, you know, I write, you know, not even just music, like, you know, I write scripts and working on TV shows and all this stuff, just like building, you know what I'm saying, building my resume, just, you know. So again, I think I don't know, to sum it up would just to be the melting pot of art in Seattle, always being just an inspiration to me.
Oh. All right, Mix, bring us home with your experiences or your most memorable experience that you can share with us.
It's actually two, but I'm gonna try to go through them pretty quick because I know, you know, time is of, you know, importance. But you know, when I was making my climb, it wasn't meteoric, right? I started like 83 and I had a little song, then a bigger one, then a big one. And fast forward to 1987 when I put out Posse on Broadway, I still felt weird because I felt like I was just something, an enigma, like Bigfoot or something that really people didn't know Seattle even existed outside of Seattle. That's what I thought. And this is where, you know, my first moment came, man. I get a call from Chuck D. And it's messing me up to this day, right? So I'm nobody yet. I ain't making no bread. It's Chuck D, and they wanted me to do this tour. And this is the tour that you saw in the NWA movie with, you know, and all that stuff. So it's me, well, let me not say me first. Public Enemy, NWA, Stetson Sonic, Hammer was on some dates, Ice-T, and Little Old Me, right? And I remember doing an interview, and I'm just straight humble, right? but I'm doing this interview and I'm trying to act like I'm somebody I'm not. You know, I'm trying to fake an accent, cuss too much, trying to front. And Chuck and Ice pulled me to the side and said, man, why are you talking like that? You know, we've heard you interview before. Be you. Don't be ashamed of where you're from. And I was kind of like wanting to be hot at them, but they were telling the truth. I wasn't really ashamed of where I was from, but I thought they didn't want to hear where I was from. So I tried to be them. And that changed me immediately. When Chuck say something, I listen, right? Fast forward. Here's the second time. This is the bigger one. Was when Mac gave me a call, said, man, I want you to come down to the Paramount. You know, come down. I want you to do Posse. And, you know, and I'm seeing Mac rolling, right? I'm like, man, this cat is blowing up. But what got me was, and I ain't gonna repeat it because I don't know if he want me to repeat it, but in doing that show, I was humbled, but I was smiling because I was watching the next level. This wasn't an iteration of Mix-a-Lot. This wasn't the second Mix-a-Lot. This was the first Macklemore. But the difference was I got done by the business. I don't mean I got broke because I ain't broke, but what I mean by done, they owned me. Mac owned them, and that was the first generation of that, and I knew it would come, but he told me a story about Warner Brothers, but I'll keep that if he want to tell, he tell you. But when he told me that, I was like, I felt like, and you know, I ain't Mac ain't my little brother, but I felt like, damn, little bro just went and did it. And it really, for me, and now, you know, watching Travis, it's like, that's what it's supposed to be. I don't want another me. People say, you want everybody to be below you. No, get on my shoulders and jump, bro. I don't really want you being me or we ain't growing. And it's just beautiful to watch that elevation, that next level that Mac took the business to out of Seattle and got respect doing it. Yeah, that's the shit for me.
That's dope. And I love what you said around hearing it from other people. Like, we think we're impressing them, and they're like, I like you for who you are. You representing something different. And I really love the statement about, I don't need another Mix-a-Lot. I want you to be the first you. So if it's the first Mac, or if it's the first Chong, or the first DoNormaal, whoever it is, or Travis, whoever's doing their thing, or Tiffany, all of us, like, we have a signature that means something. There's some value in that. And I think that was a really great statement. And I hope that those that are listening are really taking heed to that. So in speaking of that, I want to move forward with this notion. We like to call our activity in the town the scene. Like, we're all a part of a scene. And I like to say, I'm tired of being seen. I want to create something that's recoupable. So I have a question around, how do we take a scene and turn it into an industry? And I know for some folks, when they think of industry, they think about how you get done wrong. But to me, I'm talking about how it's recoupable, how it can be something that we use to make ourselves and build ourselves. So that's the industry I'm talking about. And I would love to hear your take on that, Mix. Let's start with you. How do we take a scene and turn it into an industry?
I think first thing we have to do is understand the industry that we intend to join. This is something I talk a lot about. The problem with art and business is they're 180 degrees from each other, right? One goes one direction, one goes the other. However, if you don't understand the business as you grow, while you will look rebellious and you will look good, you won't feed your family. So it's very important not to be ashamed to go out and get that bread. I don't care you can argue with me all you want to, but if you can't feed your family and you're presenting something that people are just sucking down and you're not monetizing it, somebody is. Why not let it be you? Why not let it be you? And I've been feeling that way for a long time. And when I talk about business, I usually talk about it kind of harshly, you know, because I was lucky and blessed enough to have other artists tell me, hey man, if you get a chance, own your publishing. You know, and what I mean by owning your publishing doesn't mean you administer it yourself, because that's a headache. I tried that, calling people, yo, y'all got my money? Who is this? Anthony. Click. They wasn't talking to me. So what I do is I own my publishing, then I license it back to a large company like Universal, and instead of it going 85-15 their way, it's 85-15 my way. It's real business. Understand.
No, that's dope. I think that's a great way to start it. Some people are chiming into the chat like, thank you for saying that. You know, so I'm happy you said that. Chong, I know you're new to like what's happening, and like you said, 2017 is when you did your beat battle. But when you think of Seattle scene, what would you like to see happen that would do what Mix and I are talking about as far as turning it into an industry?
Oh God, that's such a tough question. But for me, what I've seen that's worked best with people, and especially people from Seattle, is that they're able to create a brand from their own individuality and not based, and like going back to what Mick said, like a lot of artists, most artists I've seen coming from Seattle is like they're the first one. Like they're an artist that people have never like seen ever before from anywhere else. And I think it's so important to harness that and figure out what can make into a brand. Like, and it usually comes from people emotionally connecting to you. Like I find that I want to spend money, I want to drop vinyl and money on shirts and sweatshirts when I feel like I have this connection with this artist, and and most of that kind of just comes from them being 100% vulnerable and themselves on the internet, in their music especially, and on stage. So yeah, it's really vague advice, but I feel like it's just that's a lot of it's a journey for everyone to take on themselves. So yeah.
Well, you're connecting. You're definitely connecting. Let's go, Jake One. What are you thinking? Moving a scene to an industry.
I mean, I think it's a hard one because if you don't have something that's of value or that's generating money, you can't really move in that way. So the first step is to get something that generates the interest to get, commerce going. I think early on for me, I had to leave because there wasn't anything happening here. So that's why I went to the rap conventions and gave my beats to whoever would listen to them. And to this day, that's pretty much still what I'm doing. It's just on a whole different way. I think now it's a lot easier. And there aren't these, things holding somebody from being from Seattle from being successful, because we all have this platform to put your music up, and really anybody can catch one. I mean, I've seen that enough times now that anybody can catch a record and a hit. From that point, then it's up to you to control it and not be stupid. I mean, you need to all this information is out there. You can learn how to own your publishing, masters. We know the masters where the money at this point. It's a new game. So, it's really about, studying and being ready for that moment when you have it. But until you reach that point that you have something that is, of significant value, it's going to be hard to generate money from it, really.
Oh, thank you. Let's go with Tiffany Wilson next. Turning a scene into an industry. Is Tiffany still on here? Where'd she go? You're on mute, Tiffany.
Yep, I'm here. Oh yeah, okay. So I thought he was controlling mute. I know I turned it on, but I thought he could turn it off. Anyways, I think it takes teamwork. I think it's okay to have some goals around your teamwork. You know what I'm saying? When I lived in LA, the thing I loved was one guy would move out. I mean, I was lay on floors and all that kind of stuff, but you would see a lot of us laying on the floor. One would move out, get a place. He'd reach back and say, okay, now I can get you a job. You come on, and it was like we looked out for each other. We all had the same goals, the same passion. And we lost the competition between us. We became teammates. And I think that's one of the things I feel like the city doesn't have. And I think that's what attracts people is that energy, before the game, that rah, 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 that camaraderie that they see is admirable as well. Everyone willing to help each other. One person may go far, but plenty could go far if we were just to turn around and say, here's a little bit of information. Don't sell the game, just tell it. Find those people you believe in. It doesn't have to be everyone believing in everyone's craft, but the teamwork is what helps. I'm on your record, you're on mine. when I look, when I grow up, when I was growing up, I saw people like, it seemed like Queen Latifah, and there was a crew. There was, Camp Low was in a crew, and that was, I feel like I never really could see a crew here of people that all had different talents, all supporting each other's craft and just repping each other, some people may have other strengths, where you're weak, I'm strong, but it's just the unity. I feel like sometimes is what hinders us, is everyone's driving a separate ship. And sometimes it could be really easy to just say, I'm gonna tell you a little bit of extra something, or introduce. Living in LA, it was about relationships, wasn't about even how well you could sing. I used to get hit up all the time. Will you write for so-and-so? They would pump them up. Oh man, they're dope. And it's like, not really, but someone believed in them enough to say, I'm a root for you and I'm a work a part of this team. So I think that's what would really be a huge help. Is we staying abreast of what everyone is doing and show our support, even if not a genre that you're in, but showing your support for other genres and things like that in the town.
Dope. So it's about 3:43. I want to keep track of time. We're getting a lot of great chats, and y'all can also chat with the people that's in the chat room. So if you want to answer some of the questions they have for you, that would be great. And that may help during the Q&A process. So let's go to DoNormaal. What are you thinking? Town versus turning a scene into an industry. You can unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, kind of touching on what Tom said, I really believe, like when I think of all of the artists that I love that have like really like revolutionized the craft and done it really big, the first question is like, how do we create something of value? It's like, I think it can become really tricky when the first question you're asking yourself is how to make money. Because I think, like you said, like somebody said, art and business, it's 180 degrees. Like artists need to make money. They need to like support themselves. They need to feed their families and stuff. But if you're making art to make money, you're not going to make the type of art that is going to allow you to really, really make a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like do it big, to revolutionize it, to be like, the people who are way up there, like we have people who have done that.
In this room. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that it's like, it's about creating something of value for people, looking around at your community, at the world. What do people want to hear that people are not hearing? What have you experienced in your life that gives you a key that unlocks something? And everybody else needs this key and only you have it, right? So you have to figure out what that is and how to express it. How do you make people feel good? How do you make people feel cool? How do you raise people's self-esteem? It's like, that's where you get people really invested in supporting you in the long run. And I think that's the first question you have to ask yourself, more than how can I make money? Because yeah, you can ask yourself like, how can I make money? And then you might like have a couple cool songs that people forget in a few years, or like some cheap sweaters and t-shirts that nobody really cares about. You know what I mean? That's peanuts,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. You said that's one. I didn't know if you had two things you wanted to add to that. You said that's the first part.
Oh no, I think the first part is the only part. Yeah.
Oh, the only part. Okay. No. All right. Let's do Travis and then Mac, and then I want to. And Gab, I believe you talked already, and if you didn't, please raise your hand. I'll bring you back in. But let's go Travis and then Mac, and then let's get to these Q&As because there's a ton of them, you guys.
It's hard to say because I can only really speak on behalf of me and how I turned made myself a part of the music industry, really. And I guess what that was really just when I was younger, I wasn't focused on where it would end up. I was like, I'm just gonna execute an idea I haven't seen out there. I feel like I haven't seen out there to the best of my ability, and just keep doing that. You know what I mean? And I was also looking at the people around me for a lot of help in terms of like, even if I wouldn't ask them, I don't know, I feel like I just observed how the come-ups of other cities and other artists, and I kind of applied that to myself, and not even in terms of art, but in terms of ethic and how I moved and how I don't know, my whole mindset about everything. So really, I don't know, it's a hard one. How do you turn a scene into an industry? It's just focusing on making amazing music. You know what I mean? That's all I can really say, is focusing on making amazing music. And also another thing is like, we do press runs a lot when like, and I'll go meet these people in these offices in these other places, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm from Seattle. I grew up in Kent. I grew up over here. I did this. And I'm like, oh, word? You ever heard of this person, they have no clue. They never heard of me. They never heard of nobody who's in there. And I think it's going to take a lot of people, because like people from Seattle work in the music industry. You know what I'm saying? You go to Apple Music, there are people from Federal Way kicking it in there. You know what I'm saying? There's people, like, they're there, but they're just not.
For real.
I don't know, it's something about, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's something about what we have going on that's not clicking in a way that certain people in power. And I don't know if we have control of that. All I can say is that, I don't know, we just keep focusing on making amazing music, and eventually the people who have the passion are going to replace those people, if that makes sense.
Oh, I want to touch on something he just said.
All right, go ahead, Gab.
Travis definitely had a good point there. Talking about Apple Music, you go in there, there's people from Seattle there. I want to say probably my answer would probably be knowledge for sure. Because like once you know the business, like somebody else said, like, you know, talent is really half the battle. You got the talent, like that's what's up, but then you have to know the business. And for me, that's when I like really knew I was doing something. You know what I'm saying? Because I already got the talent. I know how to make, you know, something out of nothing. I already had the, you know, the product. I need to know how to like actually distribute it and make it to where, you know, it's sustainable for me, and, you know, make it bigger. So for me, really, it started, you know, booking my own shows and going to the shows and meeting the talent buyers, and then, you know, becoming friends with them, and, you know, picking their brain and stuff like that. And then, you know, finding out about stuff like TuneCore, you know what I'm saying, putting my music up on TuneCore, and just kind of learning, you know, little bits and pieces about it from just having to do, you know, that on my own. And then, you know, moving into knowing more people. And then for me, like, you know, some other people said having to move to LA, just because, you know, at some point you kind of do reach a ceiling on what kind of you can do, especially if you're trying to expand further. So for me, I went to LA, and that's when I really got to know the business as well as experience, which is, I think, another important thing. Because in, you know, Seattle, obviously there's plenty business and people that know the business, but for me, because I wasn't like experienced in it, it was more of he say, she say. So like they're telling me like, this is how it is, wooty wooty whoop. But then it wasn't until I moved to LA where I'm actually in these rooms now and having to experience it and having, you know, that real life experience like that. So I think that's really important, knowledge and experience. And then when you in the rooms, like I said, Travis was saying, you get there and everywhere you go, there's somebody from Seattle. And when you like that has gotten me like more opportunities, or just like looks from just being in that room, and someone be like, oh, you're from Seattle, you know, such and such, wooty wooty woo. And now like you gotta, you know, we have that commonality, and then that just makes things easier. So I don't know, being from Seattle is great. You know what I'm saying? Because there's people from Seattle that's everywhere. When you link up, it's always love.
Absolutely.
So yeah, knowledge and experience, I think is really, really, really important.
Absolutely. And I know, Mix, you got something you wanted to chime in on, but if you can hold it for a couple minutes, I want to get Mac in and then have Mix chime in, and then I want to get to the Q&As because it's 3:50, and we respect you guys' time. We know that you took a little time out of your Saturday to be here, so we want to be respectful of everybody's time and make sure everybody gets a chance to answer the questions that are out there. Remember to go into the chat. There's some questions in the chat for each one of you, so please chat back with those that are in the chat room. All right, Mac, it's on you.
I think that it's been said very well by everybody. You know, particularly you know, DoNormaal. Is it normal or normal? DoNormaal?
Normal. Yeah, that's why
Yeah, what she said is it to me. Like, because before we can start talking about industry or making money, like, we as artists have to develop our craft. And developing the craft comes first and foremost individually, but then when we're talking about getting out to the masses, who is going to resonate with this? Who is going to connect with it on a personal level, buy into the story, like actually ride with you through the ups and downs of a career? Those are things that create longevity, sustainability, that create a platform, that create income. But because, like, I'll make songs all the time. I might go into the booth tonight and rap my ass off, but know that that's not a record that is going to connect with people. I might just do that for myself. The other thing I think is working with local people. Like, if you go down to Atlanta and you see how all those guys move in the studio with one another and hopping from room to room and spot to spot, and the collaborative process in that, it's a very different infrastructure than Seattle, by nature. But I think that for me, there's no like magic geographical cure to this shit. Like, just because I go down to LA doesn't mean that I'm gonna come up with a hit record. Like, my biggest record out of all of my songs was with Wands, who was, computer programmer dude who was 55 years old, who wasn't in the game at all. I got a record with fucking Ed Sheeran that sold like 1% of what the song with Wands made. Like, it doesn't matter. That feature doesn't matter. What matters is music that connects with people and resonates with people. And there's no shortcut there. Like, there's no cheat code. There's no, let me just expedite the line and get to the front of it. But I do think that I'll close with this. The last thing is that what is important though, for me, is that there's hella talent here, right here, that, it might look differently, but I've always continued to work with musicians from here, singers from here, bring people out on the road from here. That to me is what, like Mick said, like, get on my shoulders and jump. Like, if we really want to pass this torch, that's what it takes. It's not on some individual shit. It's about how can we create a legacy of artists from this city, that we have a lineage that's going to continue on when we leave.
Well said. Well said. Mix, before I get to the Q&A, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, real quick, something I wanted to say. I might be getting misunderstood by some people. If you ever get in a studio and do songs for money, you lost. Nobody makes money doing songs for money. That's a myth. Number two, let me say this. It's in the industry's best interest to keep you hating cats that are teaching you about the industry. I done been around this game a long time. And I remember the first thing I was taught when I was on Warner Brothers was, oh, don't listen to Houdini. Why is that? Houdini had 5 straight records that all went platinum. All of a sudden they got dropped by majors. You know why? Because they started talking about the business to young artists like me. And that's the kind of stuff, that's the reason I talk about it so much. That's the reason I'm so emphatic about it. And when you start doing songs for money, that doesn't work. Baby Got Back was not about butts. If you think it was about butts, that means you're probably pretty young, because if you remember what was going on in that era was what, and I'm answering somebody that said this to me privately, actually, that's listening. He said it to me on my phone. But what that song was really about was not about butts. I just used butts as a way to sneak in the door. But what it was really about was, in that era, the late 80s, early 90s, African-American and Puerto Rican or Hispanic women were only cast in TV shows as whores, overweight maids that were family advisors, and et cetera. And I wanted to make sure that at that time, our idea of beauty was put forward. And I wanted to sneak in the back door doing it. So I wanted to add those 3 things. My buddy said, tell him what Baby Got Back is about. But real talk, if that was the impression somebody got, you might want to listen to me and remember I said that it is in the business's best interest to keep you ignorant about the business. Be careful.
Wow. That is amazing. Somebody just tapped in. That's amazing. It's great to hear. And so I'm glad you guys are sharing these stories. We thank you. The audience really seems to be engaged with this part of the conversation. So it's 3:57. We said 4 o'clock. If you have to go, we understand. If you can stay a little longer, we understand, but we want to be respectful of time. So, and I want to be respectful of those that are have chimed in and are watching us right now. They're watching us all over the country, all over the world. So I want to make sure that we're respectful of their time as well. So there's a question that is asked: what advice would you give to your teenage self knowing what you know now? What advice would you give? And I don't know if this is for the older cats or what, but what advice would you give your teenage self? Mac, you in on this. Mix, you in on this. Jake, you in on this. Gab, you in on this. Tiffany, you in on this. Not to leave out Chong and DoNormaal and Travis, but I think y'all still, early 20s. So I don't know if you would give too much different advice than what you're doing now, but definitely for the those that have been in the game a minute, what advice would you give your teenage self about things that you know now? Mix, go ahead. You still on?
You will put me on point first, man. But when I got in the game, it was like rap wasn't even a genre yet. Right, that's what people don't realize. It wasn't called hip hop. It wasn't a genre. It was just it was songs that people did. So it got lumped in with R&B and all that. So I figured I start touring with cats, and instead of being comfortable with my own lane, I tried to imitate cats, right? And it really wasn't me. And I remember I did a show I opened for this dude that I had never heard of, right? Called Too Short. So I thought I was the big man. I made 50 grand. I thought I was a super rich millionaire. So I go down there, I get on stage and start asking this stupid question. I'm in Oakland, and I ask, why am I opening for some MF named Too Short? Whoops.
Oh my God.
Oops. I got completely faded. I'm talking about Too Short said one word, and y'all know that word, and literally me and my guys left because I already knew we were gonna get our ass whooped or get booed, one of the two. And I said, let's just go get in our little van and get the kibbles and bits and drive back to Seattle. So if I had one advice I could give to my younger self is don't walk up in somebody's backyard talking shit. That don't fly.
All right, let's keep it moving. That's real 100. Tiffany.
I would say to know yourself, define what your success looks like for you at whatever age that is. I think sometimes people think that the only way you're successful is if there's a billion people who know your name. And what I've been finding out over the years, there are people whose name I have no clue about, who are working artists, and not saying to set your sights small. I'm just saying sometimes we bite off so much we can't chew and we burn out quickly. And so it's about know your message, what it is you want to say. And people see when you switch sides too. So if it starts to waver, that's going to hurt your credibility and things like that. So know yourself, know your lane, and love both of those. And just don't stop. Define your success, and when you've reached that spot, then shoot for the next one. But if you're happy there, stay there. Be happy.
That's right. Come on. All right, Mac. Mac said he ain't answering no if he was.
Yeah, I got it. I think a big thing. I would echo both Tiffany and Mix. Never go to Oakland and talk shit about Too Short. That's just a life lesson that we can all learn from. I think that for me, it's knowing yourself. Trust in that you are good enough, that your story is worth telling, and a big thing in life in general that I still struggle with is comparison. And comparison does not do anything for anybody. when we compare, when we size up, when we go to the fence and look at the next neighbor's lawn and compare it to our own, nothing good comes from that. And it's one thing to be inspired, it's one thing to be motivated, but when we get in that place of insecurity, of you know, I'm not enough, or if I just had that, or once I reach that point, then I'm gonna be happy. Like, all that shit is not real. That is complete ego. It is a fabricated myth. And if I could go back and tell my younger self that, you know, who knows if I would have listened. The last thing I would have said to my younger self, my personal self, is work hard, sacrifice everything for this craft, and don't smoke so much weed.
Yeah, say that. Say that. For some, that they need to hear that.
For me. For
you.
No judgment.
Right. That's why I said for some, they need to hear that very clearly.
I just wasn't good at it.
Everything ain't for everybody, back. You're right. All right, who Gab. Where's she going? Gab, are you still here? Oh, she might have left. Okay, Jake.
I guess for my teenage self, when I think back to those times, and maybe this was like an underground hip hop thing, I just tell myself to stop hating all the time. Like, we were so bitter back then about people's success, and I think it was just part of the music. I mean, it's just what we were on. As you get older, you're like, damn, it's kind of hard to make a hit. Like, that's really hard. It's a lot harder to make a hit than like something that I might deem to be dope to me. And then the other thing would have been just learn how to play an instrument. Like, we were so anti everything. It's what made it great, but it was kind of dumb at the same time. But yeah, that's it.
That's dope. That's real. That's some honesty there, because hating can stop a lot of things if we're not honest that we actually hating and not congratulating, right? So this is a question I wanted to go to Travis, Chong, and DoNormaal. This is the most popular question on there. It says, how are you coping with COVID? How are you staying creative and connecting with fans? Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
I don't know. I guess I'm still trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? A lot of people are being creative. I'm trying to figure out where I land in that or where I fit in that. How I'm connecting with people is, I mean, I've never had more time to be on my phone. So I've been like just talking and been connecting more. I don't know. I'm staying creative in the sense of like I'm learning how to do things I hadn't done before. Like I started making beats. I started They're weak, but I started. I started recording myself. It sounds bad, but I did it. You know what I mean? And I think it goes back to the question you had before. What I would like, how I would have answered is like to my teenage self, is I would have like just tried stuff and not waited. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times we wait until we're like, oh, once I get this paycheck, I'm gonna buy this, I'm gonna do this, and it's like, nah, I had the resources to do it on a smaller scale, and I didn't because I felt like it wasn't right until I had that, so I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? And if I would have just started things earlier, I could have progressed and been a lot better. So that's the answer to that. And staying creative, I don't know. I'm just trying to learn new stuff. You know what I mean? Just learning, trying to figure it out. Yeah.
That's super dope. Thank you. Chong, the Nomad.
Yeah, man, that's also just a really complicated question, because like trying to keep a consistent schedule and trying to like write every day has been good on the mental, but like in reality, I'm a lot less productive than I would say I was before all the mayhem. But yeah, like what Travis said, just do something you haven't done yet. Hone in on something. Like I haven't actually picked up any of my instruments for like a year, I think. I've just been straight up laptop producer. And I think going back to different strategies and techniques on how I make music, that's been helping a lot. So yeah, and like not worrying too much on where I get with music. Like I always have a end product in mind, and I'm trying to go into music without that and just write for the sake of writing and focusing on that all of the time instead of just, yeah, I always go in with a project in mind, but nowadays that's not the case. So yeah.
My screen went out. I thought I did the free mix and got kicked off for I thought I just got kicked off. I'm sorry, y'all. DoNormaal, can you answer that question as well? Like, what are you doing during COVID? How are you staying connected with your fans? And if you want to chime in on what you would have done with your teenage self that you know now, you can definitely chime in on that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I've been like in this weird transition space since in my life since like November. I left Seattle, I moved back down to California. And I was just like really trying to get my mental right, because one thing about being an artist that's like they don't tell you is that if you don't have your mental right, this shit is so hard. It is so hard to commit to being like an efficient, productive artist if you are dealing with some things that you gotta work through, you know, which is like just, you know, stuff about growing up, becoming an adult, figuring out how you want to move through the world. So I just came back down here, and so now I'm just trying to kind of figure out how I want to move. And I think that COVID for artists, although it's causing some stress, people are losing their jobs, they can't perform and make money. It's kind of like artists don't really ever get this sort of opportunity where it's like a cultural reset. And it's like everything that was before, who you were as an artist, how you moved through the world, that's gone now. And when we come out of this, it's gonna be a whole new world, a whole new game. And I feel like for me, that really, it gives me permission to step into who I wanna be and how I wanna make this work for myself in a whole new world, in a whole new way. And so I'm just kind of looking forward to that and visualizing what that's gonna look like for me.
So, all right, it's 4:09. We had some people that left us from Poland. Some other folks are on the East Coast. It's a Saturday. I know everybody can't go anywhere, but you know, it's still a Saturday. And so I wanted to ask one more final question. I really thank you all for your honesty. I thank you for your transparency. I thank you for sharing these stories. You know, there's a lot going on in the chat room. I see Mix has been in the chat room answering some questions. And like I said, I would advise everybody to do the same. There's some questions and comments that are directed specifically to you and the things that you're saying and how it is motivating some. So please make sure you visit the chat. And then also this conversation can continue in our Slack. The Residency has put a Slack account together so we can continue this. And I think this is something that most of the people that are tuned in want to hear. They want to know how can we figure out a way not to just showcase our talents, but showcase the talents that are here in the town. The town has a special place for me. When Amir and myself decided to talk about this and put this together, all of you all names came up for a reason. And I'm so happy that you're here. The Residency community is happy that you're here. The community at large is happy that you're here. And I want to thank you. So I would have my last question of the day is, what projects are you working on? What do you have coming out? And what can people look forward to coming from you? And I'm going to start, let's start with DoNormaal. You're first.
I'm working on an album that I have been working on for like the past 3 years, basically, like dealing with a lot of like weird, this is another thing that like teenagers I would tell, it's like perfectionism is good to a certain point, but you gotta let that shit go eventually, because perfectionism can kill you and it can make you take 3 years to make an album, you know? So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to work on this album. I'm trying to get it out and like be cool with it. And yeah, that's what's on my plate right now, you know? So it's called Yippee.
Yippee. All right, and as you guys see under their names are their @ on IG, so please follow all the participants. Thank you very much. Chong the Nomad.
I have an EP coming out, but nothing's set yet, but it's all done. It's mastered. I'm excited. I sing on all the songs, which I've never done that on a project before. And I got some guest vocalists that I'm really excited about. And yeah, like just focusing on that, deciding when that should be released. Real quick, I saw one question about um, releasing bigger projects during this time. And in my personal opinion, I think it, there's so many factors that go into releases that it's hard to say. Just get your music out there.
Oh, thank you very much. Travis.
I'm just working on another album. You know what I mean? I feel like it's the same thing every time someone asks me. It's like you live on a cycle of like you work on an album, you perform the album, then you go back and you work on that. You know what I mean? So I'm just making songs at the crib, just trying to figure out what the next move is, considering how everything's moving right now. But yeah, same old at the crib making music.
Go. Jake one.
I've been doing what I've been doing the last 20 years. More songs coming with rappers, singers. I've been doing a lot of R&B actually, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to say the names because it feels like you jinx it when you do that.
Oh, you say you don't want to jinx it, huh?
Nah, I learned that a long time ago.
All right. Well, I'm not pushing on that one. Thank you very much. Tiffany Wilson.
So over about the last year and a half, I've been in the studio. So the music is done. We are, I'm not a huge release kind of girl. So I ain't really thinking about it a whole lot, but the music is done. And we've shot some pretty cool visuals. And so I'm staying creative. I'm fortunate enough that the engineer and stuff that I work with is willing to be in one room and let me be in another, so I can still go and make music. So something's coming. I can't even tell you when I feel like I want to put it out there, I guess. But yeah, there is new music. And I've done a couple of like acoustic live streamings, and I actually really love that feeling of being in those small spaces. It's quiet, you don't hurt your voice, and you can actually hear the feedback from people too. So, stream, share, you're working on something during this COVID time, just share a clip, and, keep your sanity. And one thing I wanted to say is when they asked, how are you staying sane? I think thinking alone is a job. And I don't think we give enough time to people who sit and think, and enough credit to that. That's a job. A lot of people are doing things without thinking. So take the time to think it from A to Z, at least A to G, and then, and give yourself credit for just thinking,
Thank you. All right, Mix, I ain't gonna make you last because you're the oldest on the panel. So let's go Mix a lot.
I'm working on a bunch of stuff actually, man. Now Jake one got me scared to say names now. Oh, let's just say you'll hear it coming up. I love to produce. I mean, I'm in my studio now, and I mean, I'm an equipment whore. If I turn this camera around, y'all be like, wow. I mean, but I'm constantly buying gear, doing stuff. And anyway, the cat I'm talking about producing, we're just gonna start dropping tracks. You don't really need to drop albums nowadays because that's not the way music is even monetized or released. So we're just gonna drop tracks as we come up with them, give the album a name. And what I try to do with artists now is if I can get them out, get them going, get them some momentum, then I release them. I don't necessarily want them on my label. I just want to see them go. Just want to see them go and make it. And I want to add one thing too on the whole coronavirus thing. I actually think I had it. Real talk. And because I was on tour and that wasn't just snot, that's mucus. You know what I mean? I hate to sound nasty, but if you don't take it serious, take it from me. It was like 2 months, and it wasn't called coronavirus yet. It was just called you sick.
You sick.
Yeah, real talk. But yeah, I got a cat I'm producing, and I want to say his name now, but Jake one messed me all up now, man. It's like
Jake,
I
the
can't
bad
say it now.
juju. All right, thank you very much. And then Matt, let's close out. What you working on?
I'm making a project with Sir Mix-a-Lot and Jake One, and it drops tomorrow. We gotta just start it, but it's about to drop. Yeah, this shit. You know, I'm gonna answer the first the COVID question. Into this, I mean, I was working on an album and had good momentum. And then this happened, life happens, and you know, it's life on life's terms, man. I got 2 kids. The nanny got sick, so all of a sudden, you know, from about to head down to LA to work, got canceled, and I've been on that wake up at 6:30 and go to bed at 9, or then put the kids to bed by 9 schedule, which I just don't have energy to be creative after I've been with the kids all day. So for me, it's just it's slowing down a little bit. I've been, you know, trying to make some beats, trying to record myself, and you know, everything got pushed back. You know, I gotta, you know, from a tentative fall release of an album to, like, you know, what is this thing even gonna look like? You know, a tour, supposed to go on a tour this summer and European festivals and all that, and all of that's canceled, obviously, and, you know, probably pushed back another like 12, 14, 16 months, who knows? So you know, it's all to be determined. But you know, like it's been said, I think what's important is that you know, for one, I remain creative, and that I don't judge the shit that I'm coming up with. It doesn't need to be, you know, I'm down in the basement by myself trying to make the next single. You know, I agree with Mix that the singles never come when you're trying to make a single. I'm trying to be in the creative space of just working on the craft and enjoying this shit, and be the best version of myself in the crib, man. Be the best husband, be the best dad, and try to make some music in the meantime. And that's what it is right now. And this is where, you know, this is where God wants me, is in the house right now, real close to the family. So that's what it's going to be. And I'm grateful for that, man. I'm grateful for that. People have it a lot worse. And when I get in those moods of just, you know, damn, I was about to do this, I was about to do that, then this happened. That's me not accepting life as it is. So that's where I'm trying to get to, you know, on a daily basis. And some days are better than others. But, you know, it's good to be here. And Jace, you always do a great job of moderating these. I'm always impressed by your talent with directing traffic. And to hear from everyone on here, their perspective, you know, it helps kind of refresh mine. And it's good to just feel a part of, you know. It can be, I never want to force anything, like, oh, this person's going live, you know, every day, and they're doing a concert, and I got to keep up. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to do what feels natural. I don't want to feel like I have to keep up with, you know, any way that somebody else is moving. But it's nice to hear that, you know, we're all artists. We're all taking a hit right now, but we have the art to always fall back on.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for those kind words, Mac. It's always a pleasure to sit and talk with you, whether it's for 2 minutes or 2 hours. It's always good. I've always learned something when we talk, and I appreciate your authenticity around a lot of things. So I want to say thank you to Macklemore. I want to say thank you to Sir Mix-a-Lot. I want to say thank you to Tiffany Wilson. I want to say thank you to DoNormaal. I want to say thank you to Chong the Nomad. I want to say thank you to Jake One. I want to say thank you to Travis Thompson. And of course, thank you to Gifted Gab. And from the Residency team to the rest of the world, this has been our pleasure, our honor. I hope this conversation continues. I see your hand up, Tiffany. But if the conversation does need to continue, please join us on Slack. And, you know, just being in a room and for folks to see us in a room together, having a conversation, even though it's virtual, means so much. Like I said, this went out to the world. The world watched, the world chimed in, and now they get a little bit of taste of what we all know of what we call the town. So thank you very much to everybody. Have a beautiful day. Take care of yourselves. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay creative. Pieces.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.
Adios.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone.
Good to see you all.